acknowledged that the matter, they received my complaint, and I'm waiting for the matter to be tabled. There was another event matter when the IMF Managing Director, Madam Kristalina Georgieva, was in the country. I took a petition to Zambia and to Africa for the damage done by their policies, especially in the 80s and 90s. There were those area. Snake. What is the implication? That it should be bitten by a snake and be killed, but you say it's not our part. The police station is in the bush, so there are snakes around, it's normal. So, yes, I've been busy, and I'm glad that you called me that we can discuss all these issues.
Let's begin from there, because one of the things that, one of the things that you will hear, and I mentioned this as well, that one of the biggest failures, if we don't get it done very quickly, is repealing and amending the Public Order Act. Yeah. Is that one of the most crucial pieces of legislation that we have to sort out?
There's always been an argument on good laws and good men. You can have a good president, and when there are bad laws, then people will say it's because of the bad laws, but the president is good. Yeah. You can have a bad president, but if the laws are good, citizens are then protected. What we need are good laws. So any amendments to any law that is repugnant, that hinges, that takes away our freedom of expression, freedom of the press, freedom of conscience, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, those fundamental principles, those laws must be taken away. And we should remember that our legal reform process has been extremely slow. First, we don't have a durable constitution. Every time we amend the constitution, we want a new one. So we have a problem with the constitution. Then we are sitting on a bed of very bad laws that were enacted in the 60s, in the 40s, in the 30s to control us, to stifle freedom of expression, freedom of assembly. You needed the Chitupa to move anywhere. And the legacy, like the Public Order Act, the 1958 law, and subsequent presidents have enjoyed using it, because then it restricts your opponents from campaigning, from organizing. Therefore, you think when you restrict them, therefore you can be removed. So subsequent presidents, Dr. Kaunda promised that it was a colonial legacy law, he would change it. He didn't. He actually strengthened it. Dr. Chiluba, the law was actually challenged by, there's a famous case called Mulundika case, where there was a gathering of UNIP in Chongwe, and the police came and disrupted it, that there was no notice, there was no permit. And she took the matter to the Supreme Court.
And subsequently, there were changes in...
The Supreme Court struck down that law. It compared to our constitution and said this law, the Public Order Act, is repugnant. It shouldn't be on our statute. We are a democracy. But that government, led by Honorable, then who was leader of the House, Honorable Mianda, immediately they followed, just after the act was struck out of our statute books, they took a fresh amendment, what you now see, where they said they were now obliging with the Supreme Court ruling, and there's no way you can have a country without Public Order Act. So they said, no, every country has Public Order Act, despite what the Supreme Court had said.
So is it the issue the way that it's applied? Because if again, without discussing the true merits of Shimba Kambwili issue, but again, you can ask the question, if you are assembling at home, can you truly be thrown into cells? Is that really going against the Public Order Act? And again, there are many situations. McDonald Chipenzi, when he was in CSO, they had a similar issue in a church when they were picked up in a church.
Yes.
Is it an issue of those who are mandated by law to enforce not having a true understanding of what the law says? Or is it just about, generally, as you said, leadership just puts their hands up and says, whatever happens?
Leaders are highly insecure.
Yeah.
What you see in the police is an expression of the leadership mind. If President Hakainde Hichilema means what he says, that Kajoba would not keep people in cells for 8-10 days. He would not. The president is very clear. He has repeatedly said no person should be detained without being given police bond, especially within 48 hours. And if you cannot give them police bond for whatever your concerns as a police.
How many times do you need to say it, though? How many times does the president need to say it?
So, the Inspector General of Police, Kajoba, is not disobeying the president. For the way I know statecraft, that is the thinking of the president. It's hypocrisy. He speaks well to the members of the public, to the donors, and they believe they have a democratic president. But behind the scenes, he's enforcing these laws. We've expressed concern around this commissioner of police at State House. We know that he's really the hand behind all this for various reasons. He was a fugitive for 5 years. Maybe he's still grinding in his heart that these PF people threw me out, for 5 years. I was not there. This is where you need good laws and good leadership, so that personal feelings, personal emotions are removed and the country is run very well. There is no way Inspector General Lemika Joy, a professional officer, would disobey the president. But how many times, I would ask you a question, has the president said no one should be jailed, should be detained for more than 3 days? He says, I was jailed for 16 times. The president repeats that statement. I don't want any other citizen to go through. Yet we are going through worse than he went through. So for me, I call it hypocrisy. But back to the issue, substantive issue. The Public Order Act is a repugnant law. It should not be on our statute books. Whatever the explanations, there are good arguments by the Supreme Court in 1998 when they expunged it from the law. We are a democracy. We can gather anywhere. If you are not unruly, if you are not breaking the law, we should be able to gather. In fact, many countries have a freedom square where any citizens then can walk and express themselves. And the media even waits there to wait for whoever will bring any express of concern. And then therefore the bad application by the police of the Public Order Act makes it worse. Remember, we are celebrating 2 laws that have been removed, and that should enhance our democracy. The removal of the death penalty is under discussion. We know there are other changes that should occur, but there's a positive step that the death penalty has been removed. The criminal defamation of the president, something I personally have been calling for, has been removed from our statute. Very good. But the police have found another law. The Cyber Law and Crimes Act of 2020, passed by the PF. There are very good portions there that literally replicate the criminal defamation of the president. So when you speak against the president, they'll pick you under that new law. So people are mocking us, but the PF passed the law. So why are you crying? A bad law.
I was about to point out a text from Leonard who says you had the opportunity to change it.
Yes.
But you didn't just be sincere.
So that law was very bad. In fact, Chapter 1, Linda Kasonde and others have even challenged that matter in court, that the provisions under Cyber Law and Crimes Act are so bad that they should be expunged. The cyber law itself is very good because you need to police the cyberspace, the internet and social media. You need to police it to some extent, but you shouldn't include laws then that promote taking away fundamental constitutional.
I agree. I agree with you, but it becomes difficult in a way because if you say that you need to police the cyberspace, for example, do you also not need to police the aspect around public gatherings?
No. Citizens have rights. First remember.
It's almost the same thing.
Remember, Luchu, why the Constitution has guaranteed you freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom to hold your own conscience. These are fundamental. They are non-negotiable.
But should they not be rules that apply?
Of course, there's responsibility. There's responsibility. There's responsibility. Yeah. Every law has a negation. I should be responsible. I shouldn't insult you. I shouldn't produce hate speech against you. So yes, there should be that balance. But when the balance is not there, where one particular law is actually taking away your fundamental right, this is where we question the matter. I've heard Honorable Mlambo Haimbe, the Minister of Justice, says they will take to Parliament some amendments regarding the cyber law to remove those aspects that we think are repugnant and are retrogressive. We wait for that day. Every regime, every new government must leave a good legacy where they've improved what they found, not make it worse.
Okay. All right. I need to ask you about the party.
Yes.
Because there are some happenings in the party that I have to ask you about before we move on to one of the other big issues that I need to raise with you. Mao Sampa suspended from the party yesterday. There was a court ruling that, according to the courts, they've essentially said the acting president and the secretary general of the party, Nixon Chilangwa, both should step aside. Is that? Do you want to just explain to us what's going on here?
Yes. Yeah. So last month, Honorable Mao Sampa held a press conference, and subsequently we had our Central Committee, where the leadership expressed concern around the remarks that Honorable Mao Sampa made. We felt that he injured the reputation of the party, that he injured...
In what way? Sorry, in what way? What way were you injured as a party?
Or there were remarks that he made that were against the party. The party has a spirit and its leadership. Okay. For example, if you call that ministers were thieves, well, I think you are fueling what the ruling party is saying, that the PF are a bunch of thieves. So if one of you say they are thieves and, there's been no conviction and these guys are fighting for their lives, they are fighting for their innocence, which is constitutional anyway, but you call them thieves, they raises concerns. So there were concerns. Okay. But the end of it was that Honorable Mao Sampa apologized for his remarks that were adverse against the party and against the leadership.
Sorry, just before, I know, is it wrong then, because I think one of the things that came out was that, and this is maybe because the clips that people saw, maybe you picked out one piece from a press conference, but the feeling was that because he was in a way saying, look, mini meal is not really the fault of the current administration that the price is as high as it is, and the feeling was that maybe that's one of the reasons.
No, not at all. First of all, we should be very clear. He was not being stopped from campaigning. Okay. All of us are everywhere. We're on radio. Brand Mundwele is in Chipata, is in Kasama. Mtoto Kafwaya is where. Dr. Chitalu Chilufya is on the Copperbelt. Everyone has been campaigning. So Miles was not being curtailed to campaign. But you belong to a party. The party has structures. The party has a manifesto. The party has its own values. I don't think you are standing against the values. I speak against some of the ills of the party that was done in the past. We all speak about, cadreism, political violence, corruption. We speak against those ills because we are reforming, we are rebranding. There's nothing wrong with that. We should make that very clear. But I should be proposing reforms to make the party better. I should be building the party than destroying it. The way the UPND characterize us and speak about us, I cannot speak about the PF in that manner. Similarly, I think the way the SG of the UPND would speak is not the way I would speak about their party. We're totally different. So it was not about that. For me, by virtue that he actually apologized in the meeting, is that he accepted that he had gone off and the remarks were inappropriate, and we thought the matter was laid. But the acting president has his own presidential powers, and therefore they meted out this punishment, suspending Miles for 6 weeks and preventing him from speaking or talking about party matters. The president has those powers. If maybe we didn't have the Central Committee, if maybe Miles didn't apologize in the meeting, maybe the punishment would have even been far severe. But I think the president, with his leadership, with his consultation, must have taken all this into consideration. And the punishment was a slap. Just 6 weeks away, you are back. But Honorable Mao Sampa has fundamental rights. He has a right to go to court, which he has done. He has gone to court. He has obtained an expert order. In there, he's pleading that he be reinstated. He's challenging the leadership of Honorable Nixon Chilangwa and the acting president. In his view, he says President Edgar Lungu resigned, therefore he couldn't have appointed the two. He has put up some argument. But what the nation needs to know is that that's an expert order. So it's an order taken alone without the other parties represented. That's what it means. And that's why the judges always give a quick return date. That, okay, I've heard your concerns. Your concern is that you were suspended. Okay, I'll grant you, I'll reinstate you now until I hear the matter. But I need to hear the other parties quickly. And the judge has given 16th February for what we call an inter-party hearing, where now we should hear the views of the PF about Mau's view, about Mau's pleadings and his prayers. So there'll be an inter-party hearing on 16th February. Our lawyers will be there and will argue our case. So we'll leave the matters to the court, because when they're in court, you don't want to be prejudicial. But I thought I could explain that what he has is what we call an ex parte order. He goes before a judge and says his case has been suspended. In my view, I'm threatened. Maybe privileges will be taken away from me. Please reinstate me. Then hear us. And the judge has accepted. He has heard Mao Sampa, has reinstated him. He has made 2 orders against Honorable Nixon Chilangwa, who's our acting Secretary General, and our acting President, Honorable Given Govinda. But there is a return date, 16th February. So our lawyers will go and argue our side of the case.
Okay. So now let's wade through these murky waters here a bit. What we spoke, I've spoken to you about this before. In fact, I've raised this issue with every other one of the candidates, whether it's Greyford Monde, who was here, whether it's Honorable Brian Mundubile. I've raised these issues. One of the last questions I always ask, in the event that the convention goes a certain direction, what happens to the party? Does the party stay united? Now, let's use what's happened in the past 24 hours. Is the party still united, regardless of the direction that Honorable Sampa has taken?
It is. It's very united. For me, I think that's some of the steps we've taken. For example, to amend the constitution first before going to conference is one of those fundamental values we are promoting, to attempt to make the party stay strong post-convention. Because if we went to conference now with the type of constitution we have, some candidates will be disenfranchised. Unity will not be promoted. The process is not very transparent. It's a 20-year-old constitution. So we think that to make a durable constitution and a party that will be durable with a respected leadership, let's attend to the concerns around the constitution, so that by the time we are going to conference, we will have an outcome of a leadership that's credible, that's durable. And if anyone wishes to form a party or splinter or break away or refuses to accept, the party will be on firm ground as an institution. We are trying to build a party that is beyond individuals. Remember, in many political parties, the individual is far bigger than the political party. We are trying to do the opposite, where we broaden the strength of the institution. The leadership structures should be strong and hold accountable the president. That is what we are trying to do, than amalgamate all powers in the presidency.
I saw you on a clip yesterday. It's quite a long clip, by the way, so I shouldn't call it a clip.
Yeah.
But it's a very long footage of you with the former president. I have to ask you this, because as somebody who was very close with the late President Chiluba, and you can correct those of us who are much younger, but is it, and I've seen this argument online, is it in order for a former to, and I don't want to say to be as critical, because he technically wasn't as critical, but to be as observant as he was yesterday?
Yeah. So there's something that I've been talking about, the treatment of former presidents. I think that's a principle we should discuss. What do you do with your former leader? We've seen the victimization of former presidents in Botswana, in Mozambique, in South Africa, where presidents are arraigned before courts, they are called corrupt. They are scandalized. In Botswana, the president is fighting back. He wants to return to power, even if he was president for 10 years, because he's been pushed to a corner. And I've always stated, can't this country learn something? You had Chiluba, you had Dr. Kaunda jail Chiluba in 1981 for over 8 months. Chiluba became president. He threw Dr. Kaunda over that attempted coup in 1997. Christmas spent in jail. You had Mwanawasa, who attempted to throw in jail Chiluba, lumped all sorts of corruption allegations against Dr. Chiluba. We had President Michael Sata, again, remove even the immunity of Rupiah Banda. Edgar Lungu was far better. He didn't touch any of the former presidents, and he had 2 surviving, Dr. Kaunda and President Rupiah Banda. And now we've seen President Hakainde Hichilema apparently moving towards harassing the former president. For me, that's a principle we should discuss. What should be the place of our former presidents? In our constitution, this matter has been interrogated so strongly that to remove the immunity of the president, we've even strengthened it. What are our people saying? Our people are saying leave former presidents alone. Some people interpret that we are saying let them act with impunity when they're in power so that they escape scrutiny. No, that's not the issue. The issue is that the former president is an institution. He is capable of destabilizing the current leadership. The former president having friends, loyalties in government, outside the country, is a threatened institution, and they will destabilize you. So you will see Masisi struggling to rule. His attention is taken away from ruling Botswana because he's here. He's looking for where is Kama? Where is he? What is he promoting? Has he sent money for this opposition party? It's just totally unnecessary in Africa, especially where we have fragile peace, where our security cannot really be guaranteed. Some people say, no, it doesn't matter who you are. You can be arraigned before courts. No one is above the law. But to what extent? To the threat of your national peace and security? Because some former heads of state may not be responsible. We have seen the same crisis in the DRC, where Kabila is literally under siege with President Tshisekedi. So for us, even at the African Union, we were discussing all this. And I think that's why even when an election was done, there were assurances given to Edgar Lungu. And President Hakainde Hichilema must have given some form of assurances, because I've been in those negotiation meetings, especially post-electoral meeting, where you assure the loser and the incumbent must be responsible not to, in any way, harass the former president, because it destabilizes peace, it destabilizes our politics. So I want to start from there. I wish as Africa we learn that we are a fragile democracy. We are under 50 years of democracy. America has been under 200 of democracy, 200 years of democracy. What George Bush did in Iraq, in Afghanistan, he belongs to jail, but no one has touched him. Look at the corruption. If you look at the Halliburton corruption, $18 billion stolen in Iraq, no one has been held accountable. We are not saying America accepts impunity, but there are certain things when you pursue them, they will reveal national secrets. They will weaken the presidency. If you are pursuing Kaunda, you need to show that Kaunda used to torture some people. You open up the tunnels. Now, you have created a lasting damage to the institution of the president, because Zambians were not aware about the tunnels. Now, in your quest to fight Kaunda, now you've exposed the tunnels. When Manasa was fighting, we didn't know that Zambia had a security account in London. Now we knew that Zambia was involved in the DRC, Zambia was managing issues in Rwanda, Burundi. By virtue that you're pursuing Chiluba, you reveal your secrets and your strength, even your standing of your intelligence security. So for me, I'm reluctant for any president to pursue the former president for those reasons. It's not that we should not hold presidents accountable. Presidents must be held accountable by the current laws. So when I raise an alarm that President Hakainde Hichilema has given himself a contract to manage a $35 million under the Ministry of Mines, it's those things that I'm talking about. We should hold President Hakainde Hichilema now. We shouldn't wait until he leaves office. I should challenge, Mr. President, the company that has won, has it won legitimately? You're associated with this company. The fund under discussion is a $35 million fund. Your insurance company has won. I know you're associated by ownership, as a director, or have you sold your shares? But your business associate is still there in that act. We need to hold our presidents accountable now. Mr. President, are you firing the people at Ministry of Finance because there's an extensive audit against your government? Why are you firing the two deputies at National Audit Office? Are you firing them because they paid themselves illegal allowances, or because of the work they've done against your government to expose the rot? So I need to ask the president. I don't need to come and pursue him after 5 years. So for me, Luchi, I'm calling for transparency.
Yeah, but isn't the issue then to strengthen institutions?
Yes,
so that
exactly.
Institutions can then hold presidents account even when they are in office.
Yeah.
And at the moment, unfortunately, it's just you and I.
Yeah.
You and I can raise these questions, please declare whether you have shares or not. Are you still a shareholder in the X company? But you don't have to respond to me.
So I made a post, a Facebook post, a satirical post, where I put picture of State House and I said the thieves are inside. And I received a lot of reaction, insults and all. My point, I wanted to discuss the issue of Transparency International Perceptions Index, the 2022 one. It's out. And it's revealing, and it's very sad. So we are coming from elections. We have a new government that says it's fighting corruption. But in fact, they are not, because the perceptions have not changed. Our people think that PF and UPND are not different from corruption because they've seen the fertilizer scandal, they've seen wooden poles. You are spending $107 million to buy wooden poles from foreign countries when you can buy them locally. They've seen how you are purchasing your goods and services. They see scandals at various ministries. Our people think nothing has changed. Only faces have changed. The bananas are the same. So you have a challenge. But I said if I post the Transparency International Perception Index of 2022, no one will pay attention. So I did a satirical post. My point is, the SEC, what is it doing? Should they only be active on old cases that occurred under Edgar Lungu? What are they doing with the fertilizer scandal? What are they doing with all these murky things we're hearing about? What are they doing, for example? I personally have taken complaints to the SEC. Remember on tourism, when they cancelled those hunting licenses, I demonstrated that there's an abuse of office, where a permanent secretary even fires the director of wildlife and national parks illegally. And I demonstrate and I put documents. The case has never taken off. ZESCO was importing wooden poles, $107 million. They circumvent the Public Procurement Act that says give citizen-owned companies these large-scale procurement. The state government or state-owned enterprises must use the Public Procurement Act to empower citizens. The amendments were done in 2020. This is after the uproar that big contracts always go to foreigners. If roads, bridges go to Chinese, these major procurements maybe go to Lebanese, Indians. So now we have a law in place that compels government and state-owned enterprises to first give those to citizen-owned companies. And our government is circumventing that. At ZESCO, there are about 13 types of procurement processes. So they pick what we call direct bidding, which is like single sourcing. You pick 10 companies from Zimbabwe and South Africa and you give them. And you say it's emergency, when there's no emergency whatsoever. But that's to circumvent what the law says. So I have taken these reports to the SEC. I recognize this is a new government. I recognize a 5-year mandate. But if we see corruption this early, we have a duty to raise alarm.
So I wonder, sorry, Ambassador, I wonder whether maybe the issue should also be, rather than just raising alarm to the issues, maybe what we now need is to call for new institutions. Maybe in its current form, ACC is just not strong enough for something like this. But if we now begin to truly think that the real way of curbing these powers and these abuses is by having institutions that can then check on, regardless of who you are, where you are, the position that you hold.
The SEC,
I always like to say, and I know everyone argues with me and says, you can't give an example of America because they're democracies way ahead of us. But the president, as you know, Donald Trump, he had many issues with the FBI director.
Yeah.
Look where he's found himself. He's found himself answering questions. Why did you fire the director of the FBI? Took forward the case, while he was president. That's what we need in this country.
I always call upon these holders of constitutional offices. They're properly protected. The IG is not as protected as the SEC director. The SEC director goes through ratification by Parliament. The board is ratified by Parliament. They are far insulated. Even their tenure is secure. But why do they behave in this same manner? Why do they want to please the president? They are a constitutional office. Yes, we are recognized.
I can give you a simple answer to that.
Yeah.
whoever holds majority.
Sadly, our people need to rise that they should be loyal to the constitution and to the people of Zambia than to an individual. That is why we've structured them in that fashion.
If I'm president and I have the majority in the House, and I recommend you as ACC director, you walk into Parliament. Of course, they're going to ratify. Not ratify.
Of course, there's arrogance, or what you call arrogance of majority, where you abuse a majority you in Parliament you have. You are regarding Parliament as a rubber stamp. Whether things are right or wrong, you know your members will support it. So I agree with you. It's called arrogance of numbers, and it doesn't help us. It degrades the institution. It erodes our democracy. But my point is, SEC director is far insulated than the Inspector General of Police. The Inspector General of Police is directly appointed by the president, doesn't even have to go to Parliament. But for the SEC director and his board, they have to go through Parliament ratification. So they are far insulated. So why they behave in this fashion, I don't understand. Yes, if there was corruption against in the PF, follow it. But what about the corruption occurring now? You are waiting for another government to come and pursue President Hakainde Hichilema. Then we are in this cycle of Chiluba Kaunda, Mwanawasa Chiluba, Arabi Sata.
Can I ask you a two-pronged question?
Yeah.
The first one is, in as much as it's a bad idea to then follow presidents, but isn't anyone else in their lineage fair game? Is anyone else fair game?
Yeah.
If I'm a nephew, hypothetically, if I'm a nephew and I have profited, am I not fair game to any institution?
Yeah.
And if I am, does that then amount to prosecution?
Yeah. So, for example, if the president wishes to appoint his nephew to an institution, I would rather that there's public advert. I would rather that there's competition, and such a person is picked on merit because they're qualified.
No. What I mean is, if I went and got proceeds of crime, that's what I mean. Am I not fair game?
No.
Fair game in the sense of, look, you haven't particularly come after a sitting president, a former president, but you've gone after a relative. Is that relative not fair game?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Because first of all, we need to be very clear. Corruption is a cancer in this country. Yeah. Our people fight it every day. Our people, they don't want to entrust people that loot the treasury. Our people are very clear. Again and again, you see these sentiments. Even when they change government, they don't want a leadership that come to loot the treasury. And when they see this cancer emerging again, they get worried that, but why did we change government? Excuses. That this is my nephew or I gave who, the laws are very clear. So first of all, corruption is a cancer. There should be no excuse for it under the PF or under the UPND. For me, those are my assertions. And whoever has abused their powers, they should be. There'll be legitimate question. I think you are going to an issue like what happened yesterday where the son of the president has been caught several times to the police, and the police are asking, how did you buy this farm, or how did your company do this? It becomes harassment. Zambians will not raise an alarm of harassment. If they hear that the president's nephew collected money from the other side and the SEC has caught him, they'll say, so no one is above the law. Whether it's President Lungu's son or Hakainde Hichilema's nephew, they're being treated equally. But if you are just leaning on the old corruption, and even when our people can see with their own eyes the current corruption, but you, the SEC, you, the DEC, you, the police, close your eyes because it involves the president and the current government, maybe to secure your small seat, your small position, then it becomes a mockery. Then the law enforcement agencies are being used to fight individuals. The law enforcement agencies and the laws of the country are being used to fight your political opponents. Let's take the clear example of James Ndambo. James Ndambo was running dry ports in the 1990s. He finds this information that there's a dry port that has been given to Zambia, but Zambia has never developed it for 19 years. He seeks permission from Zambia and from Namibia, and he's given the port, and he's been running it very well. He has developed multi-million-dollar infrastructure. He has an agreement with Namport. He has an MOU with government. Government has been distant to it. This government has not even bothered about the Namibian port. James Ndambo holds a pageant. He holds a country sway because of that pageant. He is all over, all media organizations, and he holds a high-profile event that steals limelight from you, then you immediately go after him. Even the pageants prizes, you seize them. Even when he hasn't made any money in this country, he's an international businessman making his money in Ghana, in DRC, in Namibia. You say these are properly proceeds of crime. Crime from where? The guy doesn't have any business here. So you are using the law to punish political opponents. You are using institutions. Now there's a purported cancellation of that dry port. Very shameful. Someone should stand up to the president. Mr. President, sleep over it, drink some water. So that we don't make the president look petty. But it appears there's no one standing against the president. I was known for standing against President Michael Sata. He came to Mongo, to launch the stadium. He launched, he went into the grader, came down, and then he wanted the pick. Now, in Western Province, we don't use pick. It's sandy area. We use a shovel. We give him a shovel. He refuses. He says, I want a pick. And he was temperamental. And when we couldn't provide the pick, he just walks away, goes to his car, and goes to the airport. I drove like a madman in that Mongo using shortcuts. I found the president on the line. The planes were running to take him. I went and stood in front. I said, Mr. President, you are not leaving. You have an event in Shangombo where you are opening the brand new hospital, and you have a water program in Nalolo, Mr. President. You can't go back to Lusaka. There was Edgar Lungu, GBM, William Sander. There were a lot. When the president is here, service chiefs had lined up, provincial service chiefs. And the plane or the engines were running. The red carpet, he was walking into the plane. You can ask anyone who was there. I stood in front. And I said, Mr. President, what will the people of Shangombo think? Okay, so then we now jumped on the helicopters and went to Shangombo. There are times when the people around the president can just say, Mr. President, this is wrong. I know how you feel about it. I know this is close to you, but there's a bigger picture. You are running the country. You are not running your company. It's not your farm. This is not about your business or your workers. This is about the country. I don't see anyone around the president doing that.
The second part of my two-pronged question is, the president always says to those of us who ask this question about declaration of assets, and just so you know, I've changed the thinking. It's no longer about declaring assets. Yeah. Because I think that's always wrong. But he's always said, look, if those of you who ask the question around declaration, Kodisi said, they've got those resources, right? Yeah. But I've made this argument before. When you declare assets, do you declare the shares that you hold in companies?
Yeah. All your assets, exactly. All your liabilities. The law is very clear, Luchi. It says the president and his ministers should declare their assets, their liabilities, meaning in Congole, loans, overdrafts. So other than your assets, you have to declare your loans, then your interest, because your interest could be shares. There could be something you've invested for. You could be a beneficial owner. The registered owner of the company, Luche Investment, is you who's at Pakra, but I've provided money for you and we've signed a backroom agreement where I'm actually the owner. I am the beneficial owner. You are the registered owner. Those are interests. You ought to declare them. The president has declared, but he has not made them public. My dear brother Sean Tembo tried vigorously.
But who is supposed to make them public?
ECZ should not stop.
Exactly. So why haven't they? Why is no one? Why are we asking him? Why are we asking him when they already have that information?
So this is how institutions behave when they fear leaders, when they fear presidents. So Honorable Sean Tembo,
they didn't know that he was going to be president, and this is where it gets very confusing. Yeah. Because when he filed in those nominations, he was a candidate. Yeah. Why did they make the decision then not to reveal?
So there's a weakness around that came with the new constitution where your declarations go to ECZ. They don't go to the public. But in return, ECZ should make those documents public.
And that's the thing, because I feel like, I feel in a way, we've gotten it a bit wrong because we've pushed the argument. It's like if I was asking you to declare your assets, you might be as defensive.
No, I should declare them.
Why?
I should give a copy to ECZ and give to the public.
I've already given this information.
No.
If you want this information, go to the public institution that asks for this information. So now the question is, so number one, why didn't they? Fine, they haven't. So now here's the bigger question.
Yeah.
The bigger question is, the president has always said that, even in opposition, he used to say, I'm a businessman. I have shares in various companies. Where I begin to worry is by not knowing what those companies are where you have shares.
Yeah.
What kind of benefits are those companies accruing by virtue of you sitting in that office? That's where I worry. Until we know what those companies are, whether or not you've relinquished those shares or not, then everything is very murky.
Let's start with the issue that ECZ should declare. Our dear brother, Honorable Sean Tembo, tried very hard. He demanded for the president. The president said, no, those records are with ECZ. He went to ECZ, wrote a letter. ECZ declined that they were filed and sworn to us. We can't make them public for you. Ask the person who filed. He went to the Constitutional Court to compel ECZ to then release the declarations of President Hakainde Hichilema. And the Constitutional Court upheld the views of ECZ that the documents were sworn to ECZ, not for ECZ to make them public. So the matter was tested. The law was not built. We expected Concord to say he's a public official.
Yes. I need to just say this. In year one law school, first semester, they always say that don't test the law on one individual. You test the law on
a principle.
So the principle should have been, should you not declare, tell us everyone who sued. We want to know.
So probably his case was not good. Maybe his case was not good. That we shouldn't pursue one individual. But the point is the president is a public official. We knew, in fact, it became a point of mockery that President Edgar Lungu's assets and liabilities jumped from 1.6 to 23 million. Similarly, we want to know, Mr. President, as you are a businessman. In fact, he was asked in one of the interviews, Mr. President, you're president now. Will you relinquish the running of your companies that you hold? He says, no. I allocate time to still run them. I will not give up the control of the companies that I hold. So he's running the companies that he's associated with, either by holding meetings, getting reports, whatever. I don't know what that means, but he's involved. It is for that reason that we want to know. You are a public official now, Mr. President.
It's not an unfair question.
And you have said you are not getting any salary. Maybe your companies are getting these deals.
And it's not an unfair question.
No, it's a very fair question.
From an accountability perspective.
So we still demand that the president should make the records public, because these institutions he swore the documents to are prevaricating. They are fearing the unknown, that if they made his details public, maybe they'll be in trouble. But it's incumbent upon the president to say, this is what I own. These are my debts. This is my area of interest. This is beneficial ownership. This is my registered ownership. He should say that. That is the purpose. You can't fight corruption but hide your assets. You cannot.
You make an interesting point actually now.
Yeah.
Is it an African issue here that one would be afraid of making that declaration known in terms of the companies? Because God forbid, whenever, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whenever it is, one leaves office, those companies now begin to get victimized. Is that where it comes full circle back to?
I think presidents have been very fair. President Hakainde Hichilema has been in opposition over 15 years. The UPND have been in opposition for 23 years. President Hichilema's companies are known. If there were attempts to destroy them, other presidents would have done that. I think there is a sense of decency. I do not expect President Hakainde Hichilema to destroy my company or wherever I have interest. I don't expect. They didn't destroy his unless I've committed a crime. So there's some decency in this country, and that should be exercised. But if you want to hide your assets, you don't want the country or your relatives to know, don't pursue public office. don't pursue the presidency, because then you are not obliged to tell anyone what you owe. Here we are in a conundrum where corruption is a cancer in this country, where the office of the presidency is at the forefront of perpetuating corruption and crimes. We have a history where his office is used to obtain deals. If I'm a friend of the president, I'll get that fertilizer deal worth, $300 million. We have those concerns. That's why our people put up these laws. They want us to run this country in a very transparent manner. You could be a good man. You could have worked hard for your assets. But there are nefarious people that might then use your office to obtain favors from you, enrich themselves, and give you some kickbacks. That is the purpose of the declarations, is that we have to enhance our anti-corruption mechanisms. Otherwise, the anti-corruption mechanisms will be futile. We will not achieve anything if we are not doing some of these principles. We have a law now. If I receive any gift, I need to there's even a gifts register. From a position of, I think, director, permanent secretary, ambassador, to the president, I can't receive a gift without putting it in the register. Whether it's a calendar, laptop, iPhone, I need to register it. In America, any gift above $5 to the presidency has to be declared and becomes a state property. All these measures and mechanisms are designed to fight corruption. But when the president is known as a multimillionaire amongst his supporters, doesn't tell us what he is worth, then we see some of the companies associated with him rushing for business and government interest. We have to raise alarm. Does want to enrich himself. Does want to recoup. Maybe he used his money in the last 15 years to support the UPND. Is it an opportunity for him to recover using government and government monies? So we have to prevent corruption, and the president is walking on a dangerous path if he doesn't declare his assets. He has declared them to ECZ. We want him to declare them to the public.
Okay. Let me take a break. We'll be back very shortly.
Thank you.
This is Let the People Talk.
With a global presence in over 80 countries, emphasizes attention to special demands to address complex needs of farmers' challenges with eco-friendly and highly efficient protection solutions.
We veer to the economy now. People are saying we should eat rice and
with confidence. Finally, Zambia can experience crop protection solutions that has been tried and tested globally. Find us at LUS/38346 Kafua Road, Lusaka, or call us on 0907486836.
okay. To our dear listeners, you have to be patient. We are on commercial break. Radio Phoenix has to pay its bills and they have to run to news. Are we running news? And we're running news. So extremely patient. But if you have any comments, any questions, you can type it there. And I'll try to look at it and respond. We are at Radio Phoenix with Luchi on Let the People Talk, the Friday edition. He's asking me very difficult questions. I hope I'm copying, but we are willing to answer any questions that you can throw at us.
Let's see what happens if you lose your voice and you fail to take Showtalk's lozenges.
Chief, this is Denise from JF Consultancy. We want to know whether you're still interested in the contracts that you called it for.
Yes.
I can't hear you clearly.
I say, yes.
Chief, if you're not interested, we'll award the contracts to another person. Goodbye.
Your voice can save you from embarrassment. Don't let anything take your voice from you. Use Showtalk's lozenges immediately.
Mr. Denise, I want the contract. I said I want the contract.
Showtalk's lozenges contains 5 ingredients for soothing and cooling off sore throats and other throat irritations. Showtalk's lozenges, a quality product by Shalina Pharmaceuticals, Zambia.
The community news.
Wildlife officers in Luangwa gunned down crocodile that killed 22-year-old woman. Kapirimposhi miner defiled. To present the community news, I'm Lucibelo Gondwe. National parks and wildlife officers in Luangwa district have gunned down a crocodile that killed a 22-year-old woman of Chief Mpuka's area on Tuesday this week. The victim was fishing along the banks of the crocodile-infested Luangwa River when she met her fate. The Luangwa District Commissioner, Luke Chikani, says Wildlife and National Parks Senior Ranger James Peary confirmed the developments to Zanis in Luangwa. According to Mr. Peary, the reptile was gunned down by the wildlife officers after a report from villagers that it has swallowed the body of a human being. Speaking at the burial site with the Luangwa District Commissioner, Luke Chikani, and Council Chairperson, Lawrence Shaba, thanked the community for embracing unity and love in times of bereavement. A 12-year-old girl allegedly has been defiled in Kapirimposhi District, Central Province. Confirming the developments to Zanis, the Provincial Commissioner of Police, David Mukuka, said the minor was allegedly defiled by a known person at the Glass Grounds area in Kapirimposhi. Mr. Mukuka explains that the victim met her fate when she was sent back from school to go and get a necktie which she had forgotten at home. He says the victim was waylaid by the assailant as she walked home and dragged into a nearby bush where he undressed her and had carnal knowledge of her on Monday at around 08 hours. He says the suspect only stopped the act when an unknown man who was passing by disturbed him. The provincial police chief says investigations into the matter are ongoing and a manhunt for the suspect has been launched. To end the community news, another look at the headlines. Wildlife officers in Luangwa gunned down crocodile that killed 22-year-old woman, and Kapirimposhi miner defiled. Keep listening to Let the People Talk.
The community news.
It's 10:04. Welcome back to Let the People Talk. If you'd like to get in touch with us this morning, you can. 226-841-0978, 895-895. Our guest this morning is Presidential Candidate for the Patriotic Front. He's also a member of the Central Committee of the party. Let me begin first of all, Ambassador, with a question from Lucky. You may or may not consider this a fair question, but I'll ask it anyway. Lucky says, does he think generally that the country is better off with this government, or we should have retained PF in 2020?
We had a crisis by 2021. I think there was low trust in government. There were issues people didn't like, such as cadreism, political violence, and the economy was biting, especially after the COVID-19 crisis. For the first time, this country in over 30 years, we registered negative growth, negative 3.5%. We are not the only ones. The entire world recorded negative growth, except for Ethiopia and China. But the point is, there were factors that led our people to thinking that change was inevitable, change was important, and they wanted a new team to try. So President Hakainde Hichilema took over with those feelings. The economy is bad, there's a crisis in our governance, and there are issues that needs to be attended to. And 16 months on, is he attending to those issues? Things are worse. We have the highest cost of living in the last 30 years. The price of fuel is the highest it has ever been at 28 kwacha. They found it at 15 kwacha and 17 kwacha. Our people are really, really struggling. And then you have this mockery. The vice president was here. You hosted her. You did a fantastic job. She says we should eat roller meal. It sounded like what one of our senior leaders had said at the height of the issue of Milimio, where he said, so it's that mockery. The Food Reserve Agency chairman, Kelvin Hambweza, was at a press conference. And then he says, no, he went into a shop and people were not buying other foods such as rice and sweet potatoes. You see that this mockery is extremely dangerous. These are people comfortable in offices that they don't see the pain of our people. They don't see what can cause and rock a government. I cited one example of the famous French Revolution. There was upheaval in the country, and people went to the palace to protest. And the Queen, Marie Antoinette, asked the king, why are people protesting? What's their problem? And the king said, well, there's no bread. Apparently there's a shortage of wheat and there's no bread. Then she was surprised, but why can't they eat cake? She didn't know that cake was far expensive than even bread. So sometimes our leadership gets so alienated from the reality of our people. And it's too early for this government to get alienated to our people. Coming to President Hakainde Hichilema. So he said he was Mr. Fix-It. He will fix the economy. He will resolve the economic crisis. He will resolve the high cost of living. He will make things better. What are his solutions? Unfortunately, these are solutions we've criticized. He has relied on the IMF that they will resolve the debt crisis so that we can have headroom where he can now push it to development and projects. 16 months on, this has not happened. And we warned. That's how the IMF is. It doesn't matter. They always change goalpost. The UPND celebrated when the staff level agreement was announced on 3rd December 2021. They said we've achieved. PF chased IMF for 5 years. We are merely 3 months and we've got it. Honorable Msokotwane even planned the money that will come, the $1.3 billion, factored it in the national budget for 2022. The money never came. The goalpost changed. They said, first, you have to resolve your debt. Remember, multilateral financials, these international financials, IMF, World Bank, ADB, Paris Club, these that we owe money. They want you to have enough money to repay back your loans. So the critical factor for them is resolve your debt issues. Let especially commercial debtors and China forgive your debt so that you can begin paying us, and then we'll give you this $1.3 billion. Under the PF, we had begun that process. Remember, we picked an international firm called Lazard to begin to restructure our debt, seek forgiveness or restructure it, especially that there were repayment periods coming for the Eurobond in 2022, 2025, and even our debt with China. So we engaged Lazard. When President Hakainde Hichilema came, he said, no, we have to take everything to the IMF. So Lazard was told to surrender what it had done. We went now under the G20 framework. IMF took over the process. A creditors committee was set up. A creditors committee, China was reluctant to come to the party. So there were delays. The staff level agreement should have been approved by the executive board in April 2022. It was not, because the issues around the creditors committee were not done. So by bilateral engagements, China then came to the party. So when we came to September 2022, the executive board, looking at the progress made, where China now was co-chair with France to then attend to our debt, they approved. But they said, first, before we disburse any money, the creditors committee should finish their work. We are in February 2023. That hasn't been done. You saw the high-level visit by the U.S. Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, and the IMF Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva. And they all condemned China, that China is not participating. The path that PF had taken of taking Lazard and engaging China at bilateral level was far better than you subjecting IMF to a process. And this is why we've been telling the president, Mr. President, you've been to the US twice. Can't you take one visit to Beijing to help us unlock this debt? Besides, China is our largest single creditor. They owe about 6 of that $14.7 billion, $16.6 billion is with China for all this infrastructure development we're doing. They become very important in this season. The president should heighten his engagement with China. He has not done so. He allowed these people at State House to insult China. In diplomacy, you don't do that. You cannot come in my house and speak against my neighbor. My relationship with my neighbor is totally different.
Even though they will argue and say that their relationship is okay.
You know,
it's a good relationship.
No.
But,
you know, it's like your brother comes to my house and is telling me that your wife is bad. He's insulting me. Me and my wife are one. You should recognize that. I can't be a good person, my wife is a bad person. Similarly, the relations are totally different. Zambia's China relations are historical. We value them. Our people see Tazara. They see the infrastructure development that we've been done. We value the Americans. Look, they give us up to $500 million a year. They support our HIV/AIDS, TB, malaria programs. They are very valuable. So you have two competing relations that are very good for our country. You don't want their fight to engulf us. So I think the president and the president's Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be extremely careful to balance these interests and their fights. If America thinks China is predatory in nature, it should not be our opinion. We are beneficiaries. I can pick a call now and call anyone in Shangombo, in Chama, in Solwezi, in Chipili. I can call anyone because we have towers set up by the Chinese. They supported that program. Over 1,200 communication towers were done. Some of the roads, Lusaka is decongested. You can get to radio frequencies far faster than you could before. There are benefits to us. The role of leadership is to balance those interests. If China has a problem with the American, it's not our problem, and our president should learn from history. We've had 6 presidents. Yeah. We pursue a non-aligned policy. We balance these interests. Dr. Kaunda laid a good foundation, Luchi. He'll be in Washington today. He's with an American president. The following day, he's with the Chinese president. He'll be with the Russian president. He'll be with the Queen dancing. That's how our relations should be, where we are friends of all and we benefit from all of them, not to be pitted against the other.
I find myself in an unfortunate situation because I speak to different people like yourself who are in opposition, and you come in and you say A, B, C, D. This is the plan, and so in his defense, I just want to remind something of what he had said once, which was his plan in terms of sorting out his debt. His plan at the time was going to these creditors and essentially asking them to give us more time. In terms of the Chinese, I don't think, because the figure was never actually known, nobody really knew what the real figure was.
No, we did. And I'll explain.
Not publicly, anyway.
No, I will explain. We did.
The figure was always in the range of 3 billion, but it was never known to the extent to which it was. And so I wonder whether, again, I'm not sure how this works, but when you walk into office, you find yourself now faced with the reality of what the real figures are and what your plan is to say, well, this is my plan. And now how do you then now shift your plan to now cater to the two competing interests? So
one of the issues, for example, is to call an economic hinderbar. But on the issue of the debt was known, because when Lazard came on the scene, they demanded a full disclosure. Remember, there was an IMF debt sustainability program started in 2018 when Honorable Margaret Mwanakatwe, when Honorable Mwanakatwe became finance minister, she took to Parliament a revision from 3 billion to 5 billion to 7 billion.
They always used to say that they think it's more than the figures.
There was a lot of work because there was an attempt to get onto this IMF program. By 2019, the full debt disclosure of 13.1 were 12.9, 13.1. By 2020 was known in all documents and in all publications, including ministerial statements.
Okay, so all right.
So that is known. So my point is,
let's forget all that now. Here's the bigger question here is: so what is it? Just an issue of jumping on a plane? And you, who's a diplomat, knows better than all of us. Too. At whose invitation is this? Is it you?
You can cause the invitation. You have the crisis. So if you have Kafue Gorge Lower, which is Kafue Gorge Lower, which will resolve your power crisis in the countries. You've got a loan, committed loan of $2.1 billion. And a large chunk has been disbursed. There's a small chunk, maybe $500 million that has not been disbursed. It's you with the problem. It's you to initiate the program. Even in your public utterances.
But
Because there's been this
phone call, isn't it enough? Because I mean, they have said. I think the previous press, Anthony Boyle, he's on record as having once said that they had a conversation, a telephone conversation between the two presidents. If
I were to go back to diplomacy, in fact, more things are resolved before you even go to the table. What you see to the table is a process that has been done usually in an informal arrangement, in bumping meetings, in informal phone calls. What you see at the table, the coordination and the progress done at the table is through those engagements. That's how diplomatically it works.
So you think that the way to resolve this particular our debt issue is heading
to China. Get to China.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Assure them you are a big partner. You know they owe you. They are your largest single creditor. There is no harm. The president is not owned by the Americans. We should make it very clear we're a sovereign, independent country with our own foreign policy. We should not be held sway to what others will think about us. We are an independent country. The president should not appear to want to be a good boy to the Western countries. No, he should be his own man with Zambia's interest.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to wear your headphones.
Thank you.
Yeah, wear your headphones so that we can take a couple of calls. Hello, good morning. Morning. What's your name, sir? Okay, Lamar, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Mwamba.
Mark, good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Mwamba, don't speak as if you are an angel sent from above to come and rescue the Zambians. No. You had the opportunity, but you missed it. You had the opportunity to take Zambia forward, but you missed it. You had the opportunity to remove people from poverty. So, the transition of assets by the president, you must remember that it won't take Zambia anywhere. So, sisi walifaa ifirwo waliba UPND na walifaa ifirwo waliba katika. Because I see no checks and balances from the PF correct. Ever since the PF went into opposition, I think they have run out of ideas. They have totally run out of ideas. So, provide checks and balances. I'm going to it won't take you anywhere.
Lama, thank you very much, Lama. Let me take a few and then...
yes, thank you.
Hello, good morning. Bwana boss.
Kiamika ba Mwamba muli bwanji?
Nili bwino mbuya uli bwanji?
No, kiamika mulungu akisunga kamayoyo tumbeko.
Nibo kamayoyo.
Yeah. Nenzeko na kunso ya kuti mwendali ku convention. Tuna kiziwe kuti mwendali ku convention. Then it too, imwe mwenzepo pampando. Kapena wa Michael Chirufya Saja. Waisi mnawauze kuti bachoteko Public Order Act. Imwe pamene mwenze mu opposition mwenzo yona kuti niyoipa. Mulungu anami pata mpamvu loenda ku State House. Nikumbuka basata pamene wanakamba Public Order Act niramulo ya bwino. But why simu ya mika kuli ba president ika inde ichilema bamene wakulana kuicho sapo. Nikomo?
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Good morning. Morning, what's your name, sir? Sorry, Emmanuel. Go ahead. Okay, just speak up a bit because we can barely hear. Just speak up. Okay, just a bit. Go ahead. Okay, your line, Emmanuel, is pretty bad. Try and call back. Hello, good morning. Morning.
Honorable Mwamba, my friend, how are you?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
This is a man who was very caring for me. He good friend. As I'm saying like that, the angels would agree. But at one time, abandoned me completely.
Our professor, how come? Wana bali bwanji. Yeah.
Now coming to the point, I'm not trying to bribe you, but I'm talking from the bottom of my heart.
Yes, sir.
You have been articulating very well, except that human beings as we are selfish by nature. As a UPND, I expected you to speak 80% good about the UPND and 20% good about your party, which should not be the case. But you have been speaking very, very well about how presidents should be treated. With very unfair, for example, Kaunda, you arrest Kaunda for 5 months. 5 months and so on Christmas. On Wachirua, you even exhibit his underpants. This is a record now. So we must find the ways and means of dealing with these issues of presidents and so on and so forth. On the question of PF, please stop being unjust, provocateur. You have referred to the French Revolution. I was a student of the French Revolution at National Secondary School, 1969 to 71. Unjust, provocateur, agents of provocation. That you should see. Now, in conclusion, I was not happy, Mr. Mwamba, that you yourself would be a presidential candidate. If you consulted me, I would have advised you that you form a think tank. A think tank, you, people like Mufwaya, you mentioned that a think tank would be advising, when you're in PS, advising the government. Because you are a man of high caliber, and impeccable impeccability, integrity, veracity, and honesty. So let me not conclude like the members, they conclude 5 times. But let me conclude. Please think about this issue of one creating a think tank in the PF and in the government. 2, the issue of calling upon truth, justice, and reconciliation commission. But because for as long as we engage in politics of hallucination, urination, utopia, we are not going to solve the problem. And the reconciliation commission, that's what we need in this country. And you, Mwamba, please consider we can establish a think tank, even in your party, PS.
Professor Ngwale, thank you very much, Professor Ngwale. Do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you very much. Let me just start with Professor Ngwale himself. Thank you very much. He's an activist in this country and he speaks the truth. And thank you for the comments and accolades. I agree with you in the manner we treat former presidents. I have always called that we should put a stop and cycle. Sometimes this has even permeated to institutions where you see, even in FAS, Kalusha and Andrew Kamanga fight and Kamsi merge. This should come to an end, and I agree with you. Thank you very much, Honorable Ngwale. Kamayoyo Stumbeko says, when will the PF go to conference? Well, we are planning, our schedule was 31st March. We hope to keep to the date. All things are being okay. He says we had an opportunity of 10 years. We should have attended to laws like the Public Order Act. I agree with you. I know when I'm here, I'm held like I was president of PFO of the country and I have to answer to all these. But all bad laws must be, all bad laws must be amended. We are a democracy. We should grow the space. We are an open space. We are no longer a closed society like we were under Dr. Kaunda, where, 3 things were closed. We are now a democracy. Mark says, I shouldn't come here as an NGO and the PF should engage themselves in checks and balances. He hasn't seen any checks and balances. Well, of course, people like Mark are UPND. They don't want us to criticize the UPND and their weaknesses. They want me to come and praise CDF and free education. What will their ministers talk about? If their ministers are quiet, it's not my problem. If State House is quiet, it's not my problem. For me as an opposition leader is to raise issues that Zambians are talking about. Ubunganga na Budula, Wamutengo. I need to speak to that. If government is exporting maize and allowing the high milling price, I need to condemn that. So our role as the opposition is to raise these checks and balances. When government does good, we do commend them, but I think it's to be a voice for the people.
Okay. 226-841-0978-895-895. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. What's your name, sir?
Chama, I'm calling you from Zimbabwe.
Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Mwamba mukulu mwachu kenda.
Kanabe sabalishani nkulishani kuzingalume. Mkwai.
Chako wa mwamba wesu. Igumba yenu itasianyeni. Abena Zambia na avalila. Mulandu wa uchushi. Upiendi iletere Mzambia. Ichonga mafuma. Conference, wherever we be, any right behind. And whatever they want to I am Kupanga Chipani. If you want my life, if you could 10 times, helping you get yourself organized and fight for Zambians. Avena Zambia has a deal. I didn't put him away. Now, Pakistan. Thank you.
Alan, thank you very much, Alan. Hello, good morning. I am all right, Elvis. How are you?
Thank you. Ambassador Mwamba, how are you?
Mr. Elvis, good to hear from you.
Thank you very much. You see, we are shocked and very sad as Zambians because whatever we say, we are labeled as those who doesn't like this government. And you have told the effective caller there, is it a sin for you to give checks and balances? And is anyone going to dictate how you give checks and balances? Their ministers are not speaking, and yet they want to justify things which they were saying in the opposition. They will come and do better than the PF, who have done the things they were talking about better. A person who left a bag of living at 120, and a person who is now selling a bag of living at 200. I bought a bag of living at 180 quarter the day before yesterday, and yet the minister was saying we have sat down with the millers and reduced the price to 160. Who left the country better? The one who left the price of fuel at 17 quarter, and the one who is selling fuel at 28 quarter. Today, we can be talking about ending load shedding. When this load shedding ended in 2020, when the PF was commissioned those turbines that the fuel lower. Today, we are talking about the high cost of living which the UPND promised that they will come and lower. The president even said they are a farmer who will come and lower the price of fertilizer from 600 to 250. What has gone wrong today? About the presidential trips, he was so critical of the trips of the former president. Today, he has moved about 32 times just in 1 year. Wasting resources here. The one who is moving 32 trips in 1 year, or the one who moved about 50 trips in 5 years? Who is making the economy here?
Elvis, thank you very much, Elvis. Let me let you respond. I have a couple of text messages I want to read as well, please.
Yeah, let me start with Chama from Zingalume. He's also complained about Milimil and the high cost of living and how this is unbearable. And he's calling upon us to speak for Zambians and is urging the PF to be united. I agree with you. These are the measures the Central Committee of the party is engaged in. We want to ensure that the party is united. We want to ensure that post-conference we grow stronger and build an institution that Zambians can trust again. We have a broken relationship with Zambians, and we're trying to repair that. Elvis has articulated very well, self-explanatory. The president was very critical of his predecessor on all, especially international trips that he took. He himself in 16 months has taken more trips than even President Nungu could have taken in 5 years, but I'm yet to really go through, but he's taken over 30 trips in 16 months, and that averages of 2 international trips per month. People say trips that are being undertaken by the president are far cheaper. That's not true. When a president moves, the president moves. There will be advanced security, people that even attend to him in person, in his bedroom, in his room. The president doesn't make his own bed. People don't understand the presidency. Even if you see 2 people, the president and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, leaving, it doesn't mean that it's only those 2. The technocrats from various ministries that will craft those MOUs. Those MOUs require negotiations, and the technocrats are the ones that know Zambians' laws, Zambians' business interest, and what Zambia requires. So there is a huge team that travels in advance and negotiates. When you see the Minister of Foreign Affairs with his counterpart and the 2 presidents standing there, there is a huge delegation of technocrats, sometimes even with the Attorney General or his team, that would have gone there. So presidential trips are extremely expensive. Just last week when the president went to Namibia for the SADC Troika meeting, where he was taking over the chairpersonship for the SADC organ on security, I condemned that trip because the president took a private charter. Here is a country that has 2 presidential planes, a Gulfstream G650 and the old Challenger. And the president hired a plane from South Africa, a private plane. Why would you hire a plane when you have 2 presidential planes in the country? If one has gone for service, the other one has just returned for service at a huge cost of $10 million. Because the president has informed the country that he's going to sell the jet, he therefore can't ride in it because he condemned it. He made it a public spectacle that is an act of corruption. And now he's feeling morally wrong to ride on it at the expense of our country. We therefore then pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to a South African company. I personally know that company, Executive Jet. I've been there. I first even arranged one of the planes when it was hired in 2017 for the president because the Challenger was on service. But you have 2 presidential planes. Why are you hiring at huge cost of money? Because you can't ride in the Gulfstream G650. Au bakateka. Ichalo, it's about the country. It's not about your personal feelings or your personal views or what you've articulated in the past. You should always be driven by national interest. So, Elvis, I agree with you on the presidential trips. And of course, the others, the high cost of living and the comparison. Things are worse than they were. Luchi, the exchange rate, has grown its own legs. It's not listening to the propaganda by government and by State House. It has jumped. It has become one of the worst currencies in 3 months. It has jumped from 16 kwacha per dollar to 19.4 per dollar in 3 months. And you saw the announcement by Bank of Zambia where they want to restrict money supply further. And in order just to attend to the issue of the exchange rate. You have a crisis. Attend to the crisis, Mr. President.
Okay, let me play you 2 voice notes, and then I'll read you a couple of text messages.
Good morning, Nuchi and Mr. Mwamba. I think it's very disappointing to see former sitting government leaders speaking like this now that they're in opposition. This man, to say, has been in all the governments, starting from the Chiluba government, the Mwanawasa, the Rupia Banda government, and now the Edgar Lungu government. But look the way he's speaking, as if he has never been into the government to change these things. These problems he's looking at, these are the problems which are very they created in PF, when they were in positions, they created a lot of mess that such that it's very difficult now for the UPND government to tackle things so easily. They are straining to tackle everything. I don't think he's even in the right position to speak against the UPND and what they are doing. Like the member said, he should be ashamed to come on the podium and start speaking like that. Yes, we understand he knows English and he's just using the English language to lie to people out there as if there's something better they can do when they come to power. You never come into power. The only best thing Mr. Mwamba can do is just to sit and just eat whatever you gotten from the government and forget about lying to people.
Okay, that's one. Here's the second one.
Good morning, Lucia and Emmanuel. My name is Cindy, and I'm just so disappointed at just how disingenuous Emmanuel is. He is talking about the current government using the police and law enforcement against opposition leaders. What is his comment on how HH and his family were smoked out of the house, leaving the police defecating in the home? What is his comment about it and the people using our state institutions as control, including ZESCO? And I'm sure Emmanuel is going to come up and say he was a diplomat at the time. Didn't he have an option to resign, or is he unaware of all those injustices and atrocities? Thank you.
Okay, that's from Cindy. Do you want to respond to these two? Then I read text messages?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me start with Cindy, that President Hakainde Hichilema was mistreated in opposition by the police. And my question to you, Cindy, so we should allow President Hakainde Hichilema to mistreat opposition leaders because he was mistreated? Is he using these institutions to revenge? Is that the purpose of the harassment against the opposition? Where you take Honorable Raphael Nakachinda to Solwezi, you take Tayari to Lukulu, you put Chimbaka Mbwilinese where there is a snake. Is that the purpose of his presidency, to fight back and use these institutions to revenge how he was treated? I thought he would be a better leader and ensure that what was done to him, the harm that was done to him, should never be repeated on any other leader or on any other person. So that would be my answer to Cindy. The other gentleman, I didn't get his name. He says, I've been in various government and therefore I shouldn't speak like this. Isn't it the reason I'm bringing experience? Isn't it the reason I'm seeking presidents, that I can bring, all this institutional knowledge? Attempt to change this country, because you have governments after governments repeating the same mistakes. Who would think that President Hakainde Hichilema would harass the opposition? Who would think that they would speak in the manner they are speaking, where they are mocking Zambians at Karieni, Rolami? Who would think that the same mistakes that were made by the PF, they are repeating them? Who would think that President Hakainde Hichilema's government would be involved in acts of corruption? For me, I'm a reformist, I'm transformational. I bring integrity to these politics. We should not allow thieves, we should not allow callous individuals to use state institutions, to just ride. What we just change, a set of people come, they eat, you bring another bunch, they eat. Is that the purpose of that treasury? Isn't that treasury to develop this country? So that would be my answer to Cindy and the other gentleman.
Here are a few text messages. The first one, the PF seems to be pushing the fight against China, trying to put it like USA haven't helped Zambia in any way, and yet the US are in help, etc. for such a long time. The PF's push for that fight is very dangerous for Zambians and not the UPND. It's the people who will be in trouble. Why are the PF doing this? This is from somebody who's no name on this one. Second one, people like you guys should learn to be truthful. In the history of this country, a liter of petrol has never costed less than $1, which was the case under PF, thereby leaving us in this mess. How much debt did PF leave just for fuel suppliers, and how much is the current debt now? And another example, in the PF stronghold, the Nakonde Road is a death trap, and yet they claim that they worked. Bridges and other infrastructure in a deplorable state. The mess we're in is as a result of the PF. give the UPND a chance, and we'll judge them after 5 years. I'll let you spend those two, and then I'll
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
The PF and China. We are not pushing for this government to recognize China. We have an established foreign policy, non-aligned policy, where we are friends of both the US and China. I just demonstrated that the US is one of our biggest bilateral partners. They spend up to $500 million in our health sector. The ARVs are free across the country because of the US. I have not denigrated the relationship with the US. What we are saying is balance your interest. China is also our biggest bilateral partner. Respect that relationship. The Tazara you have, Tazama, the infrastructure development that was done, that have been done in this country, is thanks to China, whether in grants or in loans. You saw the president go to open the Kenneth Kaunda wing at Mulungushi International Conference, one of the best ultra-modern convention facility in Southern Africa, given to us as a grant by China. Not in Congole, as a grant, $66 million. So you neglect such a relationship? No. All we are calling for is that Zambia has an established non-aligned policy. Mr. President, respect that. Don't lean us to the West or don't lean us to China. Do that balancing act. The other gentleman says I should be truthful. Nakonde Road is a death trap. I agree with you. I've talked about that road. Serenje, Mpika, Chinsali, Isoka, Nakonde. The procurement was done in 2012, 2013 under ADB. But the procurement process for ADB or World Bank or any other projects supported by these institutions is extremely difficult. You saw the Lusaka up to Mwami border road. It was made under PF, but the procurement process started under Rupiah Banda. And the current government is now working on the Mpika Nakonde Road, because now the procurement process has come to fruition from ADB. To the ordinary, they'll claim credit that we are building that road, but the procurement process started a long time. Yes, the infrastructure was not completed, but it was done. People say the debt was abused. I can give Luchi every dollar to a project. I can say we borrowed $400 million, and I will show you Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. I can say we borrowed $350 million, and I can show you Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe International Airport. I can tell you that we borrowed $280 million, and I will show you the flyover bridges and the roads in Lusaka. I can show you that we borrowed $400 million, and I'll show you Mumbochi Dam. I can go hospital by hospital, school by school. That entire debt can be married to the money that was gotten. We have in this country something I should talk about, where we fear debt. And it's historical. In 1990, we had a $7 billion debt, and our economy was a $1 billion economy. GDP was about $1 billion. By 1991, it had grown to $3 billion. So our debt was unsustainable. It was not sustainable in 1990. Because you can't have an economy that is a $1 billion debt. I mean, $1 billion economy with a debt of $7 billion. Here, we have a debt, foreign debt of $14 billion. Our GDP is $26 billion. If it's your salary, you are not under debt distress. Because ufola 26 kwacha, ingongole showen 14 kwacha. Akale, ingongole tuakwete, tuale fola 1 kwacha, but ingongole tukwete area 7 kwacha. But our people haven't seen this. So they are very frightened with debt. They think we are debt distress. Even our planning, we plan very small fearing debt. No. Debt will be part of the reasons we will develop this country. President Hakainde Hichilema's government, if we are to put them to task, they have borrowed $2.1 billion in 16 months. $2.1 billion. The $750 million from World Bank, the $1.3 billion from IMF, and then they've opened up a large budget deficit where they are buying treasury bills and government bonds. Our local debt is $203 billion kwacha now. It has expanded, which is about $11 billion. We haven't paid our local suppliers, the debt to our local suppliers. He talked about OMCs, oil marketing companies, that we haven't paid them. The debt is about $500 million there. But we owe local contractors up to $4.5 billion. And I've been saying, Mr. President, the things are bad in our country because you are refusing to pay that debt to local contractors and suppliers. You as government cannot hold $4.5 billion of people's money. You are refusing to pay. You've subjected it to audits after audits, yet you refuse to pay our people. But foreign debt, you are quick to deploy all your resources to attempt to resolve our foreign debt. Abantu benu ishinkongole mwakwatile mwaleba te supplied air. You've done the audits. The audits have given you what was done and what wasn't done. Pay our people so that they can pay their workers. People can go back to their sites. People can have a life from the money. Our businesses are, businesses for people that, that are owed money are collapsing. People owe banks, and banks are now seizing. They say, you can't. 2-3 years, you haven't paid us. People are losing assets. Businesses are collapsing. Why would a man who was a businessman, who understands business, allow fellow businessmen to collapse because he owes them money? No, Mr. President.
This is from Stephen. Stephen says fuel was at 5 kwacha, minimum was at 35 kwacha. Why didn't they maintain the prices?
Well, things are dynamic, but clearly, as shown by the Jesuit Theological Center for Reflections, the food and nutritional basket has jumped to 9,000 kwacha for a family of 5. How much do our workers get if they need just for food 9,000 kwacha? How much is the salary of a civil servant? Is that salary a living wage? It is not. If you need 9,000 kwacha but you get 4,000, how do our people survive? Hence, we see they are yoked to a huge debt. Our people are yoked to debt to microfinance institutions. When their salary comes, it goes to this microfinance institution. Where is the debt relief for our workers? Where is the debt relief for our people? While you are looking for the debt relief for the country. Ichalobantu. Have you looked at that? The PF attempted to do a debt swap.
That's the argument you just said things are dynamic.
We should be human in our delivery of service, yes, yeah.
All right, here's another one. Mwamba, it doesn't matter how many trips one takes as long as they're beneficial to us.
The trips that the president has taken are not. I personally counted the trips the president has taken. The bulk of them are not necessary. The good ones, like the UN, to Washington, to Addis Ababa, are good. But to launch a book, totally wasteful, And some of the work he wants to do is a work that is done by permanent secretaries. And sometimes I say, maybe this president needs some small education on how government is run. You see him with businesses. He's engaged in negotiations. Mr. President, if you engage in a bad deal, who will come and correct it? The president is a last man standing. So the technocrats should go in, are the ones to do those negotiations. The president, then it comes to cabinet, then cabinet advises the president, then you allow such deals. But if the president is a chief marketing officer, forgetting his role that is CEO, is now a chief marketing officer, what happens when the chief marketing officer makes a mistake? Because he's also a CEO. How will he correct? He will not see that mistake. So the president needs some education of what the constitution says, what his job description is, what the cabinet handbook is. He needs to know his parameters and his areas of what he can do and what he can't do. We've spoken about IDC. He shouldn't be chair there. I wrote about it in 2013 when the Minister of Finance established IDC. I did a pen. I said this is a bad idea to make the president a chair of the IDC. The supreme organ the president superintends over is cabinet. So if IDC does a bad deal, it will come to cabinet for correction. Who will stand against the president if a bad decision comes from IDC? Because he chairs that and it comes to cabinet. The ministers will be afraid to criticize IDC because they'll be criticizing the chair who's the president. So there should be this clear separation of powers. His job description is clearly laid out in the constitution, and he doesn't seem to understand it. He wants to be chief marketing officer. He wants to be chief tourism officer. Those are not his roles.
Akim from Kids was talking about. He says you're contradicting yourself. You started off the show by talking about lodging a petition to the IMF, saying that the IMF undertook in 1990 in Zambia. The structural adjustment programs were bad. His question is, why didn't you advise the late president not to undertake those IMF programs if he means well for the Zambians?
Yeah, many people get surprised that I worked with Dr. Chilwa, but I'm a biggest critic of privatization. That I was in the PF government, and I'm one of the biggest critics of the IMF. My views have never changed anywhere. I don't think that the IMF are a lasting solution for me. I think that they are a last resort. They shouldn't be a first resort in the manner that President Hakainde Hichilema did it. He comes into office, he doesn't even understand the office yet, and he rushes to the IMF. He locked us into a difficult process. In my view, personal view, which I've held consistently, is that we should maximize our domestic revenue. We have a lot of money that we can collect from the mines. We have a lot of money that we can collect from other sectors. The incentives we give to the mines are totally unnecessary. We allow people to become billionaires out of our national assets, yet we queue up for 1.3 billion at the IMF. For 2 years you are queuing up for money that you can raise in 4 months in your own country. That is a deception I talk about. And the IMF gives you this false confidence.
So then why have, not even just this government, but even the previous government, the government that you served under, that's the same route that they took?
Honorable Msokotwane, Dan Kalia, the people in charge of our economy, they've been in charge of our economy for the last 20 years. That you change leaders, you think that they'll change mindsets? I've always said, I don't know these economists, it's like they're born from one mother. I don't know why they think that foreign investment is a solution to this country. I don't know why they think that IMF is a solution to this country. You mean our natural resources can't finance ourselves? We've seen international reports that say we are losing up to $3 billion a year in these multinationals failing to pay taxes, dodging taxes, organizing all sorts of incentives, doing transfer pricing. We've seen $3 billion a year, you are losing it. But you are queuing up for $1.3 billion in Washington for 16 months. What kind of economists do we have? I always question. I speak strongly against corruption because we lose another chunk of money through corruption. If we plug those holes, this country will have enough domestic revenue to run on its own. John Pombe Magufuli, the president from Tanzania, demonstrated in 5 years. Look at what he did from domestic resources, not from foreign investors, not from the IMF. He set up an airline. For the first time, the country was in plus, and all those mining companies were paying just taxes. There is a perception that if you don't give these incentives to the mining sector, then the mining sector will not come, the investors will not come. What a lie. What a lie. Look at DRC, a country that is literally collapsing, but it has the largest number of investors in that country. The investors will come if you have your assets, your natural resources, you guard them properly, you mine them at a rate that benefits the country. Kanchi mwe bantu bakwalesa nga na bafiro bale bakwata ma foreign investment ebe ngashitafe mine ifi kanchi bayale kama mine limtukesa kwata kwa bana beso abamano, then we should reopen these mines. But if we are giving emerald mines in the manner we are doing, largest producer in the world, and the owners are billionaires, they live in Paris, but look at Mufanyama, look at ourselves.
Here's an interesting take. This is from Hilda. Hilda says, it's good that Mr. Mwamba is admitting that they were doing wrong things at the time that they were in power. What politicians should be doing is tell us to work hard as individuals, because no politician will come and make everything right.
I've always said that the solution is not a politician. Here, everyone is saying the PF now look like they're the same like the UPND, because the UPND, President Hakainde Hichilema is behaving like every other leader they've seen. Our people are beginning to lose faith and interest in all of us. So we need to promote the strength of institutions, independence of institutions. We need to ensure that we craft policies that benefit our country, not policies that benefit foreigners, that make billionaires out of foreigners, leave our people wondering. In banks, I worked in a bank. A Mzungu from South Africa or Zimbabwe will walk in, who get that $1 million for his farm, that $4 million. A Zambian, even just to get $100,000, oh my, they will say security after security after security. If you look at the loan portfolio for banks, whether it's Stanbic, Absa, Zanaco, look who the millions have gone to. Have they gone to any Zambian? For me, that's my concern. We have a mindset issue where we think foreign is a solution, where we think whites are better than us, where we think that if I went to Oxford, then I'm better than you, who could even be a good economist. We have a mindset issue that we have to fight, and I agree with her, what she's saying.
Last one, this is from Mr. Williams. It says, please get a comment from Emmanuel on the construction of FTJ University.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. No, the university was sadly disrupted, and this goes to what Professor Ngwale said, maybe that we should form a think tank, and he thinks, because that was the purpose of the FJT University. So the legacy was disrupted by the so-called fight against corruption. We saw where there is a banking square at Arcades, that was where the institute was supposed to be, that was the land.
The one in Mapula.
Or he's talking of a school,
yes, the school
where a procurement was done of the $3 million and the school was not, okay. I can speak to any issue. One of the issues we need to fight our contracts. Our contracts are crafted sometimes terribly, that even if money has been lost, you cannot even prosecute anyone. So the Lusaka and Ndola Joe Carriageway is now going to be under construction as a PP. The PF contracted it for $1.2 billion. They revised it, I think under Honorable Monakato, it was revised to $700 million. This government has procured it for $750 million, higher than what the PF at the last point had agreed. They've given it to the same contractor they called corrupt. They've done the same thing.
That's not entirely true. The figure was 1.2.
Yes, it was 1.2 billion.
There was massive uproar.
Yeah.
And then they came round and said, actually, no, it's 750.
No, it's $700 million.
Yeah.
So
the events that you talk about, slightly,
no, they are the same.
Yeah, slightly untrue.
No.
The negotiation only happened because everyone protested and asked the question, why have you?
So the first PP project had hotels, it had new townships being created in Kabwe and Kapiri, and everyone said, why are you doing that? Who has informed you that you need to build new townships and hotels and filling stations and all? Remove all the peripherals. That will be done by the private sector. What's the cost of a Joe carriageway into Ndola Lusaka? In fact, a South African company had proposed for $500 million, G5 security. So it's around $700 million. The PF, as of 2019, had revised it from 1.2 billion to $700 million. This government is procuring it with the same contractors for $750 million. Where is the corruption? That's what we should fight. So it doesn't mean that the actors have changed, that therefore the corruption has gone away. Because if the corruption has gone away, why are they hiring private jets? Why are they procuring fertilizer? The PF was buying fertilizer at $900 per ton. Why are they buying it at $1,400 per ton? They'll tell you Ukraine war. No, it's corruption, nothing else. If your fuel is even far higher than what it was bought under PF, fight the corruption, don't fight individuals. They see Emmanuel Mwamba here, they think I'm PF and they should fight me. Fight the corruption. The corruption is probably even far worse than it was under PF. The Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index has shown you that corruption is as high as it was under PF. I want Zambians to get awoke and get waked up. They should put President Hakainde Hichilema to task. Mr. President, I thought you were fighting corruption. Why is the corruption perception still high? Why do they think you as head of state, engaged in acts of corruption? That's a debate we should have. Our people are concerned about the past. The PF. They've bought girlfriends, cars and houses. Here, the money is being lost. We have an opportunity to recover now.
Yeah, I wonder whether the perception index. Because again, when you ask people whether you perceive corruption or not, you're not asking them who is perpetrating corruption.
Yeah.
You're asking them, do you think that there is corruption?
Yeah.
If there are newspaper headlines that there is corruption, of course I'll say there's corruption. That's not necessarily based off whoever is in charge.
That's why I demonstrated here that I've reported large-scale acts of corruption under this government. I've walked to the SEC with a written letter. So I'm not one who just talks about things. I gather information and actually tender a report. You know, I am following up this procurement they're doing where the Environmental Protection Fund might go to a company that is associated with the president. This is $35 million of people's money going to a company associated with the president. I'm interested. I'm gathering the details. And I might walk to that SEC. They might not act, but for records, this country must know that corruption is still being perpetuated. Let us guard that treasury. There is a huge corruption scandal at Ministry of Finance. Who is there? Who's been in charge for the last 16 months? It's this government. Yeah. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you should plug those holes. You should change the perceptions. You should be fighting corruption. You know, in one breath, you are saying the PF were corrupt. In the other breath, you are giving your friends fertilizer contracts. Our people will know that nothing has changed.
Okay. Emmanuel, Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luchi, and thank you to Zambians and to the people that called, especially those that agreed with us and those that didn't agree with us. And to our people, this is our country. Let's fight for it. It's not about politics. It's about our country. So God bless you, and thank you for listening.
Have a good weekend, everybody.